I can't eat or drink tea or meditate with my glasses on because my ears wiggle. You'll have to help me with the pronunciation. I just started half an hour ago. Ta gra gama riv shiv gurla. How did that go? Hey! It's fine. Lovely. Um, well, I'm so happy to be here in Ireland. I've met some of the people that have come to the English courses, and I'm so happy to see new faces. Jair. Jair? D-A-E. God bless you. God be with you. I got back. Well, I'm so glad to be here. It's my first trip to your lovely country. And I was very, very impressed with Dublin and the countryside. And of course, Barna was very kind of her to take us to Wicklow. That was it. And it's very beautiful. And I loved watching the sheep. I thought only the Welsh, were fond of sheep. What would you like me to talk about tonight? While we're getting ready, why the English and the Welsh and the Scottish, we're really trying to make jokes of us Irish people. But on this course, we're going to make jokes on them. Do you know why the English wear bowler hats? Do you know bowler hats? Because they're afraid of the woodpeckers.
Dear Guru Raj, how can we overcome inhibitions ingrained in us by traditions in order to find our own creativity?
Now, we've got to first define what is the meaning of inhibition. Why does a person get inhibited? And who says that inhibition prevents you from your creativity? Inhibitions are normally caused by one's methods of thinking, one's schooling, one's childhood environment, churches perhaps, in many cases, and perhaps if you do believe in things, it might even go further back into past lives. Now, inhibitions are patternings of the mind. The human mind is forever patterned in one form or the other. Now, you could have very positive patterning, and you could have negative patterning, and yet both remain within the realms of inhibitions. Now, the question would arise, how should one get rid of inhibition? The more you ponder your inhibition, and a few of the things that are closely allied to inhibition is the sense of guilt and of fear. So, these very fears and these very guilt cause those inhibitions which become a stumbling block or an obstacle to your creativity. To get rid of inhibition, you have to go through some processes. One of the processes is a mental process. That not dwelling upon inhibitions, now here's the difference, be very careful in listening to this, not to dwell upon the inhibition or that which becomes an obstacle to you, but to analyze it. Not to dwell, but to analyze the inhibition. And in that analysis, you ask yourself, why do you feel inhibited? I've had many cases where people come to me with all kinds of inhibition. A young man comes to me and tells me, he says, I love my girl very, very much, but when I'm with her, I fail to make love to her. And analyzing his problem, we found that he had this fear in him that would not make him be able to make love to the woman he loves so much. So that is a kind of inhibition. Right. Inhibition is also associated with repression. The blood brothers. Many times you go through a certain experience, and then instead of analyzing the experience or shedding off that experience through analysis, you get deeper and deeper and deeper within your soul. So, these inhibitions and repressions cause impression. Inhibitions and repressions cause impression. Those impressions are first on the conscious level of the mind, but as you dwell more upon it, they go deeper and deeper into your subconscious mind. Now your subconscious mind is nothing else but a whole big collection of all the impressions you've had from millions of ages, from the time when you were the primal subatomic being until you reach the stage of the amoeba, and then through the laws of evolution, you progress through the various layers that evolution takes you through until you have become a human being. Now you are the sum totality of all those impressions that you have gained. In Sanskrit, they call it sanskara. Now, the subconscious mind, or the sanskaric mind, or the subconscious mind, to use psychological terminology for it, is continually impressing itself or flowing through your conscious level of the mind, and that governs your action. Now, this young man that came to see me, before he met his girlfriend, he had met some other girl, but you're all grown-up people, so I could speak very frankly. Fine. He had met some girl, and this girl teased him in a manner telling him that, oh, you're so small, something like to that effect. And this created a blockage in his mind. So when he really met his girlfriend, the girl he loved, he could not make love to her. So the mind is a very, very susceptible mind. Like a child's mind. It is susceptible but innocent. While a grown-up's mind is equally susceptible but not innocent. So here, when some experience is gained or something happens, immediately the conscious mind sends an express telegram or a hotline to the subconscious mind. And there in the subconscious mind, the experience you are having now is being compared. And then in all the cubby holes of the subconscious mind, you draw out the file. And by drawing out that file, you are strengthening the negativity or inhibition of the present experience. Now, what psychologists do in psychoanalysis is they try and dig deep within your mind to find out the reason for that inhibition. And they dig and dig and dig. Until the psychoanalytical process, they try and find the cause of things. And then they try to eradicate the cause by explanation. And it's making you see things in a different perspective. Now this has some value, but it is not a cure. It is, I've said many times before, it is a shifting of energy. You shift the energy from one area of the brain to another area of the brain, and those very energies might erupt in a different way altogether. So you are clearing yourself of one kind of inhibition, and then that energy that has been shifted will create some other kind of inhibition. Now, people suffer mostly because of the sense of guilt and fear, which, as I said a moment ago, causes these inhibitions and repression. Say you went to apply for a job. You went to 4 or 5 places. When you were refused the job, now you go to the 6th place, and the fear is in your mind. You'd say, 5 interviews I've had and they refused me, so the 6th interview, I will also be rejected. You go with that attitude. So naturally, by having that attitude, you are emanating a negative force from yourself. Everything emanates something. Everything is ever emanating. Like a flower emanates fragrance, fire emanates heat. The human emanates a certain energy from within themselves. And if that energy is coupled with the thought that I will not get this job, you are not going to get it. So the secret here would lie in meditation and spiritual practices, where you neutralize your mind. And by neutralizing your mind through very simple spiritual practices, and then after neutralization, you bring in the positive thought. And then that positive thought takes seed. And when you go for that interview, your mind and heart, and you feel it, that I am going to get this job. You look straight into the employer's eyes and say, I'm looking into this. You are going to give me this job. You don't tell that to him aloud. He might kick you out. But you think it and feel it, that you are going to give me this bloody job. And you can be sure that if your attitude is right, you will get it. So you have now overcome that inhibiting thought, or that repressing thought. You have overcome through spiritual practices. Every man, as the saying goes, is a master of his destiny. Every man is. But you, if you do not tackle the proper method of gaining mastery over your life and the human life according to certain theologies, I don't know where they get these figures from, but it takes 84,000 births to gain this human birth. Well, the figures might be right or wrong. No one knows. But human life is valuable. And what is the difference between animals and us? We are the same. We are the substance of the same atomic and molecular structure. The only difference is that we can think. That's the only difference between an animal and me. We can think. Now, because of this past impression, our thinking has become perverted or negative, anything, any adjective you can add to that, and I could find you a million adjectives. So, our thinking has to become right. And you cannot force yourself to think in a proper way. If you keep on saying, I'm not going to be inhibited, I'm not going to be inhibited, and that the thoughts of inhibition are there in your mind all the time, and you become more inhibited. So what do? With spiritual practices, we go to still further layers of the mind. And I've talked about this in other countries. I've done over 3,000 satsangs traveling around the world. As a matter of fact, on this tour, I've done Spain already, and then now Ireland, and then England, and then Canada, and then the whole of America. So on the go all the time giving satsangs. And I've said this many times before, that I would challenge Norman Vincent Peale, who is very, very popular in America. He has his own TV show and radio show, and he's written so many books that are sold by the millions, and I'm sure I don't think that's translated in Gaelic. Perhaps they are. I wouldn't know. Yes, mind you, Gaelic is a wonderful language, a classical language. If I had the time, I'd like to study it, because in some of the words that I've heard, I find a strain of Sanskrit in it. There's a certain purity to it, the sounds and things. There's a certain beauty in it. Nevertheless, I do not want to go off the point. So, I said on public platforms that I challenge Norman Vincent Peale on any platform, anywhere in the world. He says if you have that negative thought, and inhibition is a negative thought. If you have the negative thought, try and think of something positive, which is impossible. You just cannot turn your mind around like you turn your car around. No. Yeah. Even if you want to turn your car around, you would first brake and slow it down and then make a U-turn, unless you're a racing driver. So, what you do when a negative thought comes up, then quieten the mind with any of the practices that I've given you, and then think of something which is opposite to the negative inhibiting thought, and you'll find that you'll feel more lighter, your brain will feel lighter, your mind will feel more joyous, and then you gain mastery over yourself, gradually of course. We don't wave magic wands. If I could wave a magic wand, this world would be a different place in 5 minutes. Great men as Buddha and Christ and Krishna aside, but the world is still the same as it was 2,000 years ago. But there are few people, some people, a lot of people, but by regular practice, they would gain, they would improve themselves, the quality of life improves. So, the secret is so simple that if you take your mantra, for example, you take your mantra, you think it in the mind first, and as you think of your mantra, you'll find that mantra going into deeper and deeper levels of your soul. You'll find your metabolic rate dropping, you'll find yourself more relaxed, you'll be shedding off a lot of stress and tension, which is another great disease in the world today, strain and tension. So, as your metabolic rate drops, your breathing slows down, your body becomes more and more quieter. And when the body becomes quieter, the mind becomes more quieter. Then that very mantra that you have taken or started with goes right through the subconscious layers of the mind that is filled with impressions. That mantra is like, what do you call that where you clear roads with? Bulldozer, that's it. Yeah. So that mantra becomes a bulldozer and goes through the various layers of the subconscious mind and reaches the level of the superconscious mind, which is universal. So from that universal storehouse, we could call it the kingdom of heaven within. And every religion says that in different ways and different words. And from there you draw that energy. And my favorite analogy is this, that if you spend half an hour in a perfume factory, you must come out smelling like perfume. So now you draw this energy from the deeper level of yourself, and you infuse the conscious mind with that energy, and your inhibitions disappear. So you need outside help to make your inhibitions and repressions disappear. And that outside help is not external. That outside help, this word sounds paradoxical. That outside help, meaning the higher mind, is within yourself. And every man is able, every woman is able to capture that divinity. Because you are living gods. You are divine. And many of you that are on a course with me for the first time, you see me coming in, greeting you like that. It means that with thought, word, and deed, I salute the divinity within you. But the trouble is, we have created so many veils that we fail to see our divine soul. Say, for example, my brother is ill, perhaps terminally ill, because there are very few people in the world. There are not even as many as your fingertips. There are a few, one or two, in this world that can have control of death. That can have control of death. As a matter of fact, I'm just about finishing a new book of mine, and I'm just going to do 4 chapters more. So when Vidya came to South Africa, I normally speak into a tape recorder and then it gets transcribed. So Vidya took about 8 or 10 of those tapes, and I've still got to do 4 more hours to finish the book, and the title is What Really Happens After Death. It should be interesting. Okay. Because I've introduced so many new factors. I was telling Bhavna yesterday and Arun, I'll talk about that later. Right. I was telling them yesterday about it, that there have been books written, Life After Death, Life After Life, and those doctors have been totally, written by doctors through the researchers, they have been totally wrong, misinterpreting things. And I hope to bring it back in this new book. Fine. So, inhibition is created, as I said, mostly by fear. Now, this boy that came to see me, this young man, that married this girl, his girlfriend, and we couldn't make love. Why? Because every time he was together with her, the thought of the failure of the first time used to come to his mind, and he could do nothing. Now, if this thought was discarded, then it would not, his non-performing, what have you, would not be there. But him being dwelling on this thought all the time, they're going to bed, they're married, fine, and this thought just was that, will something happen or not? And then nothing happens. Now the best way to discard this inhibition is to reach that higher power within ourselves, that kingdom of heaven within, and draw from it that vast energy, and you'll be surprised how your mind can be transformed, how your thought processes can be transformed, how your inhibitions and repressions can be discarded forever. And when you throw off these things that make you miserable, what comes in its place? Joy and happiness. Now this young man and this young woman that are married and want to make love naturally, it's a natural function, nothing wrong with it. Yet I'm not like those teachers that tell you become a celibate. I say, no. If God has given you organs, use them. Just for a purpose. So, I put this young man through various practices. And it's totally normal. We have 2 lovely children. And they're very, very... So, you see how thought rules our lives. It has been proven by science, especially the medical science, and most probably they're trying to arrange it that I will be giving a talk to the British Medical Association. Some letters have been sent and I'm waiting on Rajesh and Jasmini to see what replies they've received. So most probability. And I will be speaking on the alternate ways, apart from allopathic medicine, the conventional medicine, alternate medicine of inner healing. The people that suffer of inhibitions and repressions require inner healing. That is the secret. And inhibition always has as its basis fragmentation. That means one thought is pulling this way and another thought is pulling this way, and those thoughts are so contradictory to itself. They're so contradictory that the conflict is raised. And where there is conflict, there's no peace. Because with this man and woman that I've been speaking about, when you make love, with your wife, your husband, You don't have all these thoughts in your mind. You just flow and let things happen. You let go of your thoughts. You let go of your mind. Do you know why the Scottish people like to be constipated? The Scottish people, they like to be constipated because they can't let anything go. Let go. That is the idea. So if you have any negative thought, or if you have any inhibition, you can never destroy it because nothing is destructible. But you can discard it out of your system. It will go to those that are in a similar position. Therefore, remember one thing which is very important. If you think an evil thought or a negative thought, then you will attract more of those kinds of thoughts. If you think a good thought, a godly thought, then you will also attract those kinds of thoughts towards you to strengthen the thoughts that are in you at that time. Because thoughts could never be destroyed. Thoughts are things. They are solid. Thoughts are made of matter. But the matter is so fine that the naked eye cannot see it. Like atoms. There are billions and billions of atoms around here. You can't see it with the naked eye, but with a microscope you can see. And yet one day perhaps, seeing that technology is progressing so fast, that perhaps thought could also be put under a microscope. Let's hope that day will come. But then there's always two sides to a story. Technology can bring so much benefit to the world, and technology can also be the instrument of destruction. But to give an example, America has invented a kind of satellite that could be, do you people work in miles or kilometers? Miles, yeah. That is a satellite that could be 230 miles up in the sky, and yet through its beam it could pinpoint a car parked in a parking lot. Look at the advance of technology. So technology is advancing all the time, and it could be very destructive. And we know the history of Atlantis. How come the entire continent blew? Because of man's greed, and more so the greed for power. So, technology will advance, but what is so necessary, and that is my message to the world wherever I go, and I have repeated it 1,000,000 times, is love and peace. And inhibitions and all that will just disappear if you have peace within yourself. And when there's peace within yourself, you can love. And when you can really love in totality, away from fragmentation to integration, where mind, body, and spirit functions in unity, then you can really love. And when you can truly and totally love, then know you have met God. Because God is love, and love is God. People love, they say they love. They really don't. A lot of infatuation or motivation to the love. That is not love. That's doing business. You love me, then I will love you. Bargaining. Also this morning you didn't give me my clean hanky if I went to work. I come home with a big face. No. Love is to give and to give and to give. And if love is God, you take one step in love, then 10 steps come towards you. Because you are divine, that happens. The only problem is the veils of nescience or ignorance that blocks the path. So what we need, I never say spiritual development. I always say spiritual unfoldment. Because it is already there. Every cell of your body is permeated by divinity. And not permeated only by divinity, but every cell in your body is divine. If we regard divinity to be omnipresent, everywhere, when your every cell, billions of them in your system, is divine. Isn't it? I'm getting a bit too heavy. Let's get away from divinity and get back to the Scots. You know, the Scot hired a taxi. Are you cutting? There were you.
You're not allowed to take any more stuff.
I read that. No, they say, oh, we van. Of course, this chap was going to meet his lawyer at the law courts for a bankruptcy case. So he hired, he made our meditator John Weston fly up to Scotland. Who's John Weston, by the way? Yeah, hello. First time we meet. Good. So, because John Weston flies up there, and John says to this fellow on the telephone, look, I'll meet you at the court. So he met him at the court. And this chap came to the court, and he hired a taxi. It was a bankruptcy court. So, this man who was being bankrupt, he tells the taxi driver, he invites the taxi driver into the court and say, you can also be one of my creditors. Now let's get on to the English. There was an unlucky Englishman who could not eat all bran. Because, all bran, those flakes you get, all bran, cereal. Yeah, this unlucky Englishman couldn't eat all bran because he gets constipated. Yes, so let's get back onto what we were talking. And so essentially, what we need is integration. And by being integration, we will know love. And when we know love, then we can express that love. Inhibitions are one of the things that prevent one from expressing true love. Because if you don't even love yourself, how can you love others? So becoming integrated, you start loving yourself. You start recognizing the divinity that is within you. And when you start recognizing the divinity within you, then you start spontaneously recognizing the divinity amongst others. And you regard that I am thee and thou art I. So if we are all one, who is there to hate? Or for what reason should I have any inhibitions at all, or any repression, when the universe and I are one? Now that comes with understanding. If I always encourage our meditators to listen to as many of my tapes as possible. All my talks are recorded. They're all recorded, and I always encourage them to listen to as many tapes as possible. By that, you gain a different perspective of life, some new understanding, and coupled with your spiritual practices that are given to you, life could become very, very meaningful and very beautiful. There are meditators here from overseas, and would you know that wherever I go, they would come along. The meditators from America, sitting over there, England, from all over, Denmark, they come. They want to hear words that could be helpful to themselves. I hope they are wise, because I'm a very humble person. It's not I that speak to you. Something inside that just flows. It's not only the word, but it's the spiritual force that he exudes through me. This is for newcomers, I always liken myself to be a piece of wood, a flute. And he blows so the world could enjoy beautiful melody. So, in these things, one has to be sincere. One has to be really honest with oneself. Because the greatest lack of people is this, that they cannot face themselves squarely in the mirror. You know, this one lady went to an art gallery, and she was fond of art, and she was halfway through the gallery, and then she saw one picture which she found very ugly. So she called one of the attendants, and she asked this attendant, "What is that?" He says, "Madam, that is a mirror." Life is fun, life is joy. And in America we have our motto, life, love, and laughter. Learn to laugh at yourself. Learn to love yourself. Then you will know how to live with yourself. So all these analyses that we go through has only a very limited depth. And as I've said many times, if the room is dark, why analyze the darkness and growth around? Switch on the light. And the darkness disappears. Now, to finish one story, say, my brother is very ill in hospital. It could be a terminal case or whatever. Now, if I sit here worrying about it, it is not going to help my brother. My worry for my brother is not because of my brother, but because of myself. My attachment to my brother. It is my duty to help my brother as much as possible. But if there is nothing that can be done, because death cannot be controlled, it is not in our hands. There are one or two people in the world that can control death. I should have been dead when I was 15, but I'm still kicking it strong. Open heart operation, severe sugar diabetic, got to take injection every day, cancer, the lot, but I'll still live for another 20 years. I've still a lot of work to do. And I'll leave this body at will when my mission is completed, otherwise not. So, now, my brother's ill, they're in hospital somewhere, and the thought I must think is to picture him in my mind as if he is raw. So I'm sending healthy thought forces to him and not thinking of his illness and sending thoughts of illness to him. Sending healthy thought forces to him. Now this might not perhaps save his life, but at least it will make his passing over, if it is very severe, it will make his passing over more easier. Now, so this attachment too comes from inhibition. It comes from attachment. It comes from attachment. I do not own my brother. I do not even own myself. He owns everything, because he is everything. So therefore, many times in my consulting rooms, people come with bereavement and things like that. And I go deep into the subject and explain them these things. But what has to happen must happen. But that does not mean you're going to put your life in misery. And it's not going to help your brother either, because you're thinking of illness all the time. Think that he is peaceful. Picture him, visualize him. Don't think he's peaceful. Come what may, it is his will. Thy will be done. We are practicing Christians, but yet we do not take into account that which is very true. Thy will be done. And only when I have become one with God can I say, your will and my will is together. Our will be done. Which I am him, he is me. Brahma is me, I am Brahma. But that is something very rare, very rare. But in the present circumstances, in the present state of human evolution, we have to develop that quality which we call acceptance. Accept the situation. Accept yourself. Many weaknesses the person has, but accept the weakness. It's by accepting the weaknesses and looking squarely into the mirror that one can improve upon one's weaknesses. But firstly, if you do not admit weaknesses, then how can you improve upon them? For example, in Spain, I gave a talk to Alcoholics Anonymous. That was in Spain. They have the Madrid Society of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they invited me there to give a talk. So I gave a talk, and I went into the psychological factors of alcoholism, because that's a great disease today. People can have it shot normally, nothing wrong with that. But when it becomes compulsive, they just can't exist without it, that your entire physiology and psychology calls out for it, and of course it is recognized by doctors as a disease, and I was speaking to them. And one of the principles is this, that admit to yourself that your life is unmanageable and that you are an alcoholic. Admit that to yourself. Admit it to a very close friend. And from there, your progress will begin. To other Scotsmen, now, people die, of alcoholism. I've heard about that. But this Scotsman, now what alcoholics do is this, that, when the craving becomes intense, they are asked. I've read up a lot on the subject because, I've helped a lot of people around the world on the problem. And even a person has that intense craving and just can't help himself, and he is requested to phone a friend. And the friend will talk to him and just that, and it'll take the craving away. That's one of their systems. Right. But now, this Scotsman was dying of sobriety. He was dying of being sober. So, in that society, they had the principle, if you're dying of sober, you phone your friend, and he'll come with a big bottle of scotch.